Hi everyone! Before we proceed to my Callipeg process, I just want to say welcome to my first ever voiceover video and first ever Callipeg video. Please note that I am a keyframe animator, so I usually use transformation tools on my animation process instead of the traditional frame-by-frame animation. Also, this video is not a deep dive into Callipeg, but rather just showing you guys what specific tools I use whenever I animate anything using Callipeg. For now, if you have any questions after watching this video, just put them in the comment section below so that I can get to them and answer them on the next Callipeg video. As you can see right here in Procreate, I created a sketch of the 3 separate parts that I'll be using to animate this blush emote. At the very top, we have the hands. On the middle, we have the face. Last part is the full body. Now I'm opening up Callipeg and importing these images. When I do this, I already make sure that they're arranged by layers. Also, do take note that Twitch emotes are only allowed 60 frames maximum when it comes to length. Now I'm grouping the layers in one folder so that it's easier for me to see the layers together. I rarely, if ever, label my Procreate layers whenever I draw an illustration, but for animation, it's pretty much a necessity. Now I'm adding a transformation layer and putting all 3 layers in it. As you can see, the more parts I add in the transformation layer, the bigger the bounding box becomes. This just means that every single element that's in that transformation layer will be affected by any animation you do there. I usually move the pivot point from the center to the bottom of the image. This works for me when I attempt to create a bouncy with a slight rotation movement. Now, the first animation I'm doing is focused on scale because my goal here is to apply the squash and stretch animation effect. As this is gonna be a loop animation, I make sure that I've already put a keyframe on the first and last frame. Usually, when I do any adjustments, I start in the middle first, as this will give me a good idea of the timing that I would want to do with that specific movement. I have to admit that when I do this, I usually eyeball it and really experiment a lot, so a part of me is finding it a bit difficult trying to explain why or how. As you can see, I added a curve in the center keyframe. This gives me a control of the speed, whether I want to make it faster or slow it down as it moves from left to right. I actually realized here that 36 frames seems to be a bit long, so I decided to cut it down and make it 30 frames instead so that it'll be a quick loop animation and it'll fit the style that I want to do for this specific emote. Now I'll be adding transformation layers on each element, the hands, face, and body. In order to do this, just select the layer and go to import and tap on transformation, and the transformation layer will appear above it. For the pivot point of the face, I just put it in the center. And again, in order to loop, I add keyframes on the first and last frame. For the first animation movement, I started with the position X and Y because for this one, I need to observe the movement of the full body so that I'll be able to get a good feel of how I would want the face to be angled in the movement that the full body is making. Compared to the full body, I want to add more movement to the face, which is why, as you can see, there are 4 keyframes here and I'm playing around with the 2 in the middle. Just to remind you guys, I'm not a professional animator. This is something that I do merely for fun, so I usually eyeball it and follow most of the basics of animation and just wing it as it goes. Which is why, as you can see here in my keyframe process, that there's a lot of experimentation happening because I usually go for just what looks good. Right now, I've also added keyframes for scale so that I can also apply the same effect of squash and stretch. It's taking me a lot of keyframing to decide and be satisfied with the face movement. So instead of showing you guys the full process, I will be sharing the Callipeg file for this specific animated emote that you can download in the description below so that you can see the final keyframing that I did for this emote, as well as maybe, you guys can have fun with it as well and make your own adjustments to it. Now we're moving to the hands, and I put the pivot point in the middle of it. For this one, I decided to add some movement to the position, scale, and rotation, similar to the adjustments that I made with the face animation. Now this transformation layer that I'll be adding is a bit of a hack rather than an animation, because if you know or are familiar with Twitch emotes, they're presented in a very small size, so usually it's zoomed in more on the facial expression. So for this one, instead of cropping it outside a different app or something, I just used the transformation layer and scaled the full image and crop it from there. This gives me more control over the cropping, as well as make possible adjustments to it further into the process, as well as the fact that it preserves everything that I scale outside of the border. And finally, the part where I import the final rendered images from Procreate to Callipeg and put each specific layer under their own transformation layer, and of course, hide the sketches. If you reached this far, thank you so much, considering this is my first ever voiceover video in YouTube. I do look forward to making more of them and of course improving along the way. I hope you were able to learn something from this video, like just a few tips or ideas, because the truth is, this emote was actually more of an experimental stage when I was still learning. So in a way, I could really only show you guys how I do it rather than the specificity on how to actually do it. I am definitely learning a lot more as I keep doing that. So yeah, hopefully on future videos, there's more clarity and instruction to it. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed this one. See you on the next one. Bye-bye!